The moment the train lurched to a sudden stop, Aarav felt the weight of his entire life pressed down on his chest. It was broad daylight, the kind of bright afternoon where the sun spills through glass and pretends everything is fine, yet inside him there was only exhaustion, unpaid bills, and a 7-year-old boy waiting at home with homework questions he couldn't always answer. As Aarav steadied himself on the metal pole, he noticed a woman a few seats away, dressed impeccably, staring at nothing while silent tears slid down her face. In a city that never slowed down, heartbreak was usually invisible. But this time it was sitting right there, raw and unguarded, and Aarav had no idea that this single moment of kindness would soon collide with a truth far bigger than either of them could imagine. Before the story goes any further, if you believe that kindness still matters in a world that feels rushed and broken, take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Touch for more stories about second chances and humanity at its best. Aarav was not a man life had been gentle with. At 36, he already carried the posture of someone older, shoulders slightly bent from years of responsibility that came too soon. 3 years earlier, he had lost his wife, Naina, to a sudden illness that turned their ordinary mornings into hospital corridors and quiet prayers. When she was gone, silence took over their small apartment, and Aarav was left to raise their son, Kabir, alone. Every day since had been a careful balance between being strong enough to provide and soft enough to comfort a child who still asked why his mother couldn't come back from the sky. That afternoon, Aarav was riding home from his second job, the daylight still strong outside the train windows. He worked mornings as a warehouse supervisor and afternoons delivering packages for extra cash. His hands were rough, his eyes permanently tired, but his heart remained strangely open. He had learned, through loss, that pain often hid behind ordinary faces. The woman across from him looked like she belonged to another world entirely. Her tailored cream blazer, polished shoes, and neatly styled hair suggested success, confidence, and control. Yet her trembling hands and unfocused gaze told a different story. People passed by her seat, pretending not to notice. Aarav noticed because he knew that look. He had seen it in the mirror at 3 in the morning when Kabir was finally asleep and grief had room to breathe. Without planning it, Aarav shifted closer and sat in the empty seat beside her. He didn't ask questions or offer advice. He simply sat there, present, steady, human. The train continued moving, sunlight flickering across their faces as the city blurred outside. The woman wiped her tears but didn't pull away. For a few quiet minutes, two strangers shared the same fragile silence. Her name, he later learned, was Elira Voss. At that moment, it meant nothing to him. To Aarav, she was just someone hurting badly enough to forget the world around her. Elira had spent the morning in boardrooms and glass offices, making decisions that affected thousands of lives. She was the CEO of Virex Global, a multi-billion-dollar technology empire built on innovation and ruthless efficiency. But none of that mattered now. Earlier that day, she had signed papers that finalized the end of her marriage, a relationship sacrificed slowly on the altar of ambition. She had walked out of her office smiling for her employees, then boarded the train because she couldn't bear the isolation of her luxury car. And somewhere between stations, the armor finally cracked. Aarav's quiet presence grounded her in a way nothing else had. No cameras, no assistants, no expectations. Just a man who looked tired but kind, who didn't need anything from her. When the train slowed near his stop, Aarav stood, gave her a gentle nod, and prepared to leave. He didn't exchange contact details or promises. He simply wished her strength and stepped back into his ordinary life. That evening, Aarav returned home to Kabir, who greeted him with a wide grin and a drawing taped to the wall. They ate a simple dinner while sunlight faded into evening, and Aarav helped with homework at the kitchen table. Money was still tight, worry still constant, but there was comfort in routine. Aarav tucked Kabir into bed and sat alone on the balcony, wondering briefly if the woman on the train was okay, Then life moved on, as it always did. Days later, Aarav's warehouse announced an unexpected corporate visit. A major client was touring facilities, and management buzzed with nervous energy. Aarav focused on his tasks, unaware that fate was quietly circling back. When the executives arrived, the warehouse fell silent. Leading them was Elira, composed, confident, every inch the powerful CEO the world knew. Aarav froze when their eyes met across the loading floor. Recognition flashed, followed by something warmer, gratitude. Elira requested to speak with Aarav privately, stunning his supervisors. In a small office filled with daylight and dust motes, she thanked him for that afternoon on the train. She explained, without details, that his simple act had arrived at a moment when she felt utterly alone. Aarav shrugged it off, embarrassed, insisting it was nothing special. To him, kindness was not a currency. It was survival. Elira, however, saw something rare. She had spent years surrounded by people who wanted something from her. Aarav had wanted nothing. Over the following weeks, she found reasons to visit the warehouse again. They spoke during lunch breaks, exchanging stories of loss, responsibility, and the strange emptiness success could not fill. Aarav spoke about Kabir, about learning to braid hair for school events, about the fear of failing as a father. Elira listened, truly listened, in a way she hadn't listened to anyone in years. Gradually, Elira began to help in ways that didn't feel like charity. She connected Aarav with a logistics training program sponsored by her company, one that offered flexible hours and real advancement. Aarav hesitated at first, pride battling practicality, but Elira reminded him that accepting opportunity was not weakness, it was trust. As Aarav trained, his confidence grew. He discovered skills he didn't know he had, leadership instincts sharpened by years of responsibility. Kabir noticed the change too. His father smiled more, worried a little less. Their small apartment felt lighter in the daytime, filled with laughter and plans instead of quiet endurance. Elira, meanwhile, found herself changing as well. Watching Aarav navigate life with humility and strength reminded her of values she had buried beneath ambition. She began restructuring parts of her company, introducing employee wellness programs inspired by Aarav's struggles. Kindness, she realized, was not a liability, it was leadership. Months passed, and the bond between them deepened into something unspoken but powerful. They shared long walks in the daylight, Kabir running ahead, the city alive around them. Elira was careful never to overshadow Aarav's independence. She admired his pride, his resilience. For the first time in years, her life felt balanced, grounded in something real. Eventually, the truth of her wealth fully surfaced in Aarav's understanding, not through headlines but through honesty. Aarav was stunned, even overwhelmed, but what stayed with him was not the number attached to her name. It was the memory of a woman crying quietly on a train, needing nothing more than someone to sit beside her. As Aarav's career advanced, he earned promotions on merit, not connections. His days grew more stable, his future less frightening. Kabir thrived, surrounded by care and possibility. Elira watched it all with quiet pride, knowing that the smallest moments often carried the greatest power. Before this story reaches its final moments, if it has touched your heart even a little, please take a second to like the video, share it with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribe to Kindness Touch so these stories can keep spreading light. One bright afternoon, standing together in the open air, Aarav reflected on how a single choice to notice someone had reshaped his life. Elira reflected on how losing control had led her to rediscover her humanity. Their worlds had collided not through wealth or status, but through shared pain and simple kindness. Just before the ending, we have one special request for you. Comment below what this story made you feel, or share a moment when a small act of kindness changed your life.